Well, Xavier's cousin Eddie is here finishing up his paperwork. But before we put his information in the system, how about we let a pro take you for a test drive? A QBO test drive, that is. Xavier still won't let me drive that sweet Stingray of his. It's like he doesn't trust me or something. Can you imagine?
So a new employee is coming on. What do we need to have? Well, of course, there are some very important forms that need to be filled out, like the W-4 form. That is going to identify the employee's name and address and social security number, tax ID number, all of the key information about that employee. And it identifies whether or not, or excuse me, how they are going to be filing with the federal government as far as married or single, filing jointly, separate, whatever. All of that information is filled out on that form. Many payroll systems now, once that form is filled out online by the employee, it just automatically completes that area inside the application. That's the ideal world. But that information is required, as well as the I-9. The I-9 is an employee eligibility form that typically is going to have a couple documents that are going to identify that employee, that they are supposed to be able to be employed. And many times it includes things like a driver's license or passport. Those are the most common. And typically copies of that is going to be retained either electronically or in paper copy form by the employer. As the bookkeeper, that is something that we advise our clients on. We're not always on site to make sure that stuff happens, but we let them know. And often, depending on the payroll system used, it can be kept online in that employee electronic file that you would have per employee. Of course, there are also state forms that need to be completed. If there is state withholding taxes, then that state will provide a form that the employee also should be filling out. And there can be other types of forms. If they're going to be doing direct deposit, there are times when a voided check needs to be submitted so that that information can be entered in, or again, depending on the payroll system, they would be entering that in directly into the system by the employee, and they would be able to maintain that. So the ultimate information that we have about every single employee, there are statutory requirements for those employees on those forms, the information that we need to have. So again, understanding what information needs to be filled out and keeping copies of those and retaining those securely. Again, those employees are filling out very personal information. It needs to be held in strict confidence and security. And so that is important as well. One tip that I often tell bookkeepers as they are working with an employer to fill out these forms, as a client working with them, one of the things that's really important is that we are not providing the tax advice to the employees as they fill out those forms. Some of those forms can be complicated. Some people have a really difficult time filling them out. And while you can provide some instruction, be careful that you're not providing tax advice on what you think that they ought to file as. That is not our role to be providing that type of advice, but we are providing information to the employer and sometimes to the employees on instructions on what they do with the form, how they store the form, the types of forms they need to have, but we're not actually completing it or telling them how to complete it, providing tax advice. But all of those pieces of compliance are extremely important and definitely something that we need to know about. Finally, there are types of deductions that are important for us to understand and make sure that those are being recorded per employee. Most of them are pretty standard as far as the amounts and things like that. We do have to understand whether or not those things are being taken out pre-tax calculation or post-tax calculation. So in other words, are they calculating that deduction if an employee made $1,000 and they have a $200 deduction? Are their taxes going to be calculated on the $800 or back at the $1,000? So understanding pre and post-tax deductions is important to understand. It's also important to understand about garnishments. There are times that courts or states have mandated that certain amounts be taken from an employee's paycheck, and understanding if those are going to be in a specific order. Does the federal or the state have to be taken out before a court mandated one, before other benefits are deducted? Understanding that order may also be an important thing to research as well, depending on the type of garnishment. So understanding that those types of things can occur, going into that, asking the right questions and making sure that that is set up correctly, all things that we need to know as we're onboarding or assisting our clients as they onboard new employees.